Hello and welcome back to the Witch's Brew podcast. We are doing another nap time podcast, so we'll see if he wakes up because he does not let me put him down. Anyway, this is one that I've been wanting to record for quite some time. We are going to do some ghost stories today, as I'm sure you've seen in the title. We are going to talk about my experience with the Hatman. This is one that I really had to prepare for, energetically speaking. My experiences with him were extensive and terrifying, and I wanted to make sure that I cleansed and protected my home before I recorded this episode. So I did a cleanse yesterday, I did a protection today, and after I record this episode, I will do this second layer of protection just to make sure. So this started all the way back when I was 5. We moved into this new house. Prior to that, we were living in a duplex. I had this adorable pink bedroom. I was so excited to have a nice big room and a big girl bed. And honestly, when we first moved in, the vibes were fine. We moved in when I was 4. And it was, I would say, shortly after my 5th birthday where things started happening. Now, keep in mind, we had 3 spiritually gifted people living in that house. Myself, my mom, and my dad. Also, as a child, I was very susceptible to spiritual experiences. As mentioned before, my whole family is very spiritually gifted, and no one ever learned how to protect themselves. So as a household and as a family, we were quite vulnerable. I remember the first time that I realized that the vibes were off. I had this really cute little play area in the basement, and I had this cute little bistro table with a couple of chairs, and I loved that thing. I loved having tea parties and playing down there. And our property butted up pretty closely to our neighbor's property. There was a window down, an egress window down in the basement that you could see their house. And it was like 4, maybe 5 feet of space in between our house and theirs. And I was playing in the basement, and something felt off. It was very different from any time I had ever played down there in the first place. And it felt like I was being watched. And from that point forward, every time I went down into the basement, I felt like I was being watched. And I felt extremely uncomfortable. And as I was leaving the basement every time, I felt like someone was right behind me. A terrifying feeling for a small child. So I started spending less and less time in the basement because I could just tell something wasn't right. Around that time, my mom started having experiences as well, also in the basement. We had a deep freezer down there, and she was in the deep freezer getting something. She looked over and saw a man standing at the other end of the basement. He was a shadow, but she looked very quickly, and she thought that it was my father. It was not. That was one of her first encounters with the Hatman. So that was definitely not the last. Things started out pretty slowly. Again, mostly basement centered, where you would just feel uncomfortable. You would feel like someone was watching you. My mom would be in one end of the basement, look up and see a man standing there staring at her from the other end of the basement. Going forward, right, I slept upstairs in my room, and I liked to sleep with the door open, which did not last for very long, because one night I woke up in the middle of the night, and from my doorway you could see down the hallway, and it wasn't a very long hallway, but there was a stairway at the end of the hallway. And in the middle of the night, I saw a man in a hat with a trench coat that went down to his calf, walk up the stairs. So, unbeknownst to me, I found this out years later. My mom, the same time that I was seeing the Hatman walk up into my mom and dad's bedroom, she was experiencing night terrors and sleep paralysis pretty badly, which is wild. I saw him walk that route a couple times, and that's when I started sleeping with my door closed, because I just couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't do it. I was too scared, which is valid, especially for a 5-year-old. So honestly, things kept happening throughout my time growing up there. I would often experience things like the lights in the hallway turning on, and that light switch had an audible click to it. So you would hear the light switch turn on. No one was over there. At night, I could not be downstairs on the main level by myself without the lights on, without feeling like I was being watched, and without feeling extremely uncomfortable. There were points where my mom was home alone, and we used to have, she still has it, it's a china cabinet with glass on the front, and it used to be situated where if you were sitting at the dining room table, you could see the reflection of someone walking to the door in the china cabinet. So that happened a couple times where my mom would be sitting at the dining room table, and she would see a man in a hat, walk up to our front door, to the point where she would get up and go answer the door, and there would be no one there. I would also see, as I was washing dishes in the kitchen, there was a window right above our sink. And in order to get to our front door, you had to walk past the kitchen window. And I'd be washing dishes. I would look up and I would see a man in a hat walk by the kitchen window towards the doorway. This would happen all the time. It was such an insanely common occurrence. After I went away to college, that's when things started really amping up for my mom. All right. I mentioned earlier the house next to us. I used to go over there as a little girl, and the vibe in there was off. It was not good. The whole house felt like you were being watched. And my mom and I had a theory that whatever was terrorizing us and making us feel uncomfortable originated from that house. And that was confirmed during that period. And, you know, there was a point where we got it out of the house. And then one day my mom was coming home from work and she looked up, she parked in the driveway. She looked up in the rearview mirror and she saw a shadow man in a hat, in a trench coat, standing behind her car. He waved at her in her rearview mirror. My mom got out of the car and then it chased her into the house. And after that, it was back in the house again. And that was while I was away off at college. She has a specific spot on the couch where she sits, and it's towards the corner of our living room and in front of a big picture window. Yeah, little guy's awake again. But he's just chilling, so we're just gonna go with it. She would hear tapping and knocking on the wall by where she sat. She would have these like just terrible thoughts, and it really preyed on her anxiety. All of a sudden her night terrors were back, and she went through just like a period of time where her mental health was not it at all. Meanwhile, whenever I would come home from break, I would start seeing the shadow man with the hat and the trench coat back in our house. I would see him out of the corner of my eye walking through the living room. I would see him walking up the staircase. At this point, I started also experiencing night terrors where I was, in my dreams, I was being dragged out of my bed and like abducted. It was terrifying. And there were times where, again, I'd be washing dishes and look up and, see him there. One of the most terrifying experiences that I had, other than the night terrors, I was, again, in the kitchen. I was taking dishes from the sink and putting them in the dishwasher. There was a pass-through window where you could see from the kitchen all the way through the dining room and through the living room. And so I would take the dishes, put them in the dishwasher. When I would look up through the pass-through window, I saw the Hatman standing in the middle of the living room and staring at me, not moving. I was just kind of shaking. I was trying to shake it off and just not pay attention to him, not letting him see how terrified I was. I kept doing the chore that I was doing. I turned, I put it in the dishes in the dishwasher, looked up again, and he was closer to me. I did it again, and he was a little closer. Then, the final time, I look up, and he is standing in the middle of the dining room table, again, staring at me. I did not ever see him move while he was doing this. He was just getting progressively closer to me. Freaked me out. After that, I said, I'm done. And I went upstairs to my room. And I did not come out again until someone else came home. I would be reading on the couch and see him again, just standing in the living room, staring at me. I will say he never tried to chase me, but he definitely he didn't need to, because he pretty much terrorized me. It became such a regular occurrence to see him that I really tried not to pay attention to it. He was just all over our house. And I will say at this point, when I went away to college, there was not someone living next door. Now, our next door neighbor's house, up until recently, there would be people that would move into the house, be there for a while, sometimes a couple months, sometimes a couple years, but something would always happen where the matriarch of the family would have a mental breakdown, and the family would fall apart and just fall to pieces. Oftentimes families that were living at that house would get divorced or separate. Portions of the family would move out and stop speaking to one another. And eventually, for a while, that house stood unoccupied for quite some time. And that is when things really started to pick up at my house, which is unfortunate. And also unfortunate for those families. Eventually, honestly, the only way anyone got it to leave, and this is kind of sad, but the only way anyone got the Hatman to leave was when my dad passed in October 2017. My mom had very frequent experiences and was experiencing night terrors, and, both of us would see the Hatman all the time. It didn't really prey on my dad. My dad, as far as I know, had very few experiences. And it preyed mostly on women. But my dad passed, and then suddenly there were no more experiences. So something must have happened in the astral plane where my dad was able to get rid of it. But yeah, those were honestly some of my more formidable memories. And I was talking to my editor, Chris, yesterday before filming this, and I realized that a lot of the very clear memories that I have are from the Hatman when I was growing up. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's because fear make such strong memories in order to aid in survival. And that part of the brain has very clear memories. I don't know, but it was quite a way to grow up. And honestly, I would not wish that on anyone. And I feel like we had a pretty mild case, all things considered. So yeah, that was my experience with the Hatman. It's feeling pretty okay energetically wise here, but I'm gonna still do one last protection. I'll probably do a sound cleanse as well. But thank you so much for listening and for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.